Welcome in, everybody. Michigan State Spartans Live. I'm your host, Ryan Elke, here on the Voice of College Football Network, Tuesday, July 28th. And we are, 30 days-ish away from college football returning. And lots to talk about today. Big Ten Media Days starting today. Last week I made a mistake. I thought Big Ten Media Days were going Monday through Wednesday, so I thought Michigan State would be speaking today. They go Tuesday through Thursday. So Michigan State is speaking tomorrow. That is their day. So Thursday, we will recap everything they said. It's Jordan Hall and Nakai Martinez. And, of course, Pat Fitzgerald will be there. So we'll break down everything that was said about MSU, what MSU was kind of saying about themselves. So that'll be Thursdays. For today's episode here on Michigan State Spartans Live, a lot to talk about. There's a couple things just around the college football universe I want to talk about and how it can relate to Michigan State. And then we're going to get into some numbers that have been released more on the roster because the average roster age have been kind of calculated. So we'll see where Michigan State ranks, how that kind of what we can expect possibly from those numbers, if anything, if you can expect anything from those numbers, and how they stack up to just the years past. So welcome in Michigan State Spartans Live. And we're live every Tuesday, Thursday, 9 p.m. for now. We're going to start calculating what the schedule should be once football season begins so we can get more episodes out to you because we'll have real games to talk about. And I'm itching for it. I'm itching for that Friday night kickoff. I love the Friday night games MSU always starts with. I know I've heard, rival fan base past like that's the kids week. That's a high school kids day. You can't take the Friday nights. It's Labor Day weekend. Those kids, barely any kids are playing Friday night. So I love that MSU shifts their opening night to Friday. Get a night game. Escape us from a 3:30 kickoff that we'll inevitably have, throughout the rest of the season. So I love the Friday night special to kick us off. So we'll get started into our first day. There's two things I want to touch on. One, we'll touch on Ohio State real quick because they just announced their jersey patch. I believe it's JP Morgan. So they're going to have their jersey patch for this season. And that's something MSU we're going to be seeing with Michigan State this year with the MSU FCU, the credit union for Michigan State. It was a 10-year deal, $4 million a year, so $40 million total. For Ohio State, they're getting $15 million a year. $15 million. And that is a lot. So what you say about the jersey patches, how you feel about it, at least ours, it's Michigan State related, but that money is where I feel like the huge difference where it is Ohio State, a bigger brand. They're getting, the national brand there on their jersey patch, but 15 million feels like on the high end. 4 million feels pretty low for the Michigan State side. For a jersey patch, for I believe for Michigan State goes for football and through basketball and hockey. So it seems like just brand wise, while Michigan State's a solid brand, a good brand, there's a lot of room to make up here on the revenue side of how we value these things. To where it seems like maybe MSU was shortchanged a little bit there on their deal for their jersey patch, especially considering how many sports they're doing it with. And now you're going to see other schools start, raking in these deals and to see where MSU, I feel like, could have gone if they would have maybe played their cards a little bit better. At least with this jersey patch, we'll say MSU on it. I mean, that's really all the benefits of it will be, is that it will be MSU FCU. So it won't be as much of a disruption as JP Morgan, patched on the jersey. or have we seen here in Detroit sports the priority patch, the garbage patch kids for the Detroit Red Wings? The Pistons have had Flagstar Bank on their jerseys, the Tigers with Meyer. So at least in terms of jersey patches, it's the less out of place. The color scheme still fits in to where I believe it's a white patch on the green jerseys, a green patch on the white jerseys to make them stand out more. But it seems just a little disappointing seeing Ohio State's deal for their jersey patch and Michigan State, what their deal was, I believe announced a little over a month ago or maybe 2 months ago. It seems like that, Michigan State, maybe the raw end of the deal as these other teams start rolling in, but maybe that's just the reality check of where Michigan State is at the moment for their business. With the eyes that they expect and the audience that they expect for Michigan State. But when you also tie in basketball to these jersey patches, I feel like that's where the value could be driven up a little bit more when it comes to that. So enough with the jersey patches, though. Just wanted to touch on that because I thought just saw that roll across the desk today of Ohio State's jersey patch, and thinking back on Michigan State's deal that they announced just a little bit ago, wanted to just bring to light where it's like, I think MSU just didn't get that great of a deal for it. And I feel like most people at the time when Michigan State announced theirs was like, that's it. That's all we're getting for a full-on jersey patch for all these sports. So next up is Texas A&M just announced something incredible that I'm surprised I haven't seen more of. And that had something to do with their tailgating. And maybe Michigan State can implement this soon. So they're going to have some land open up. These tailgating suites that Texas A&M is going to launch, where pretty much looks like a mini apartment complex, where it's like, I think it might be like almost like a horseshoe style building. There's a little football field in the middle. These are just renderings. I don't believe anything's been built yet, or maybe ground was just broken. But in each building, there's about seven apartment style, suite style setups to where you have like a living room area, upper deck area, a patio, and you get the outside area as well to kind of roam around, play your yard games for tailgating. And it just looks absolutely incredible. I love this setup. I think it's a great way to generate revenue for, football season. What will be done with those suites when it's not football season? I didn't read too much into what Texas A&M plans to do outside of football season with them, but I love the idea. And we all know what at Michigan State, IM West is getting torn down, and that's right next to Spartans Stadium. And if something can be implemented right there for a sweet tailgating setup, I know they're going to implement more tailgating right outside Munn this year. I got the email of secure your spots, but you can't reserve more than 4 games for the season at in front of Munn. But if you built like these actual tailgating structures, kind of almost create something like Texas A&M, or have something like Eastern Market a little bit that's that close to the stadium. Not that I will probably ever be in a position to, take advantage of something like that, but to see the possibility of it, and just tailgating is one of my absolute favorite things. Go up with my father every weekend. He's a season ticket holder. I cover the games, so I ride up with him. Saturday mornings, we get our spot. We're more by off Grand River just a little bit. That's where we tailgate. We found a nice spot over there where it's first come, first serve, but there's a lot of regulars there. But it's a nice, I like somewhat of a congested area for tailgating. You want to be around the people while tailgating. And with Texas A&M's new setup that they're revealing just for that little area, those tailgating suites, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, if all you got to bring up is just, food and beverages, and it'll probably create a service where you probably don't even have to do that, where it's just more park and you're ready to go. Yeah, I think that creates a far better service, a far better atmosphere than probably what the space is going to be used for. So if MSU is looking for, I don't know what their plans are for the IM West lot. I think they're just rebuilding a different, something else there. I'll have to dive into that, but maybe we can make a petition. Remember a couple years ago when after the Mel Tucker, firing, and Mel Tucker's house was up for sale in East Lansing. Well, it was like a $3 million house, humongous house. Had a Michigan State basketball court in it, a cigar room, ironically a massage room as well. I remember just being a little noise on Twitter of like, how do Spartan fans, how do we all pitch in to buy this to make this the ultimate tailgating house? Because it'd be an absolutely electric idea to just have that there at Spartan Stadium. And I love the tailgating atmosphere up at MSU because there are different little pockets that you can go to, like, the area where my father and I tailgate off of Grand River. That's great, kind of by the old by the Union, outside of that parking garage. That if you go, was a little south of there, the horticulture building, they have that little open field. You go off Shaw, go by the tennis courts. You have right by the stadium, as well as the stadium parking lots, and now you're getting the Munn parking lot involved, or the Munn field involved. You have the Meyer Fan Fest as well. Like, I think there's some really nice pockets where MSU tailgating all kind of conglomerates, so it's not too spread out, but everyone kind of has their certain area. So to see what to see this idea from Texas A&M, see if MSU could bring something of that to life, especially for those later games in the season when it's starting to get a little cold out, you're trying to find a touch more shelter, I think would be absolutely electric. So I hope MSU looks into something like that as the year progresses, and they can figure out, how Texas A&M handles it, and see if Michigan State can implement something like that in the future. So those were kind of the two fun little news and notes I wanted to touch on. But now we're going to get into our big topic of the day, and that is roster age and roster construction. We've touched on different transfers. We touched on how the offense is going to look, but now it's been calculated of Michigan State's average age of starters. That's what's ranked. The average age of starters, and also the average age of just the entire team roster. I have to look back here on my Twitter to figure out, give the proper credit where credit is due, because it was John Rhodes who did it, who works for Buckeye Huddle off the Believe Network. So he calculated these numbers of average roster age. This one's just by the starters. And if we look, there's Michigan State, top of the list. Average starter age, 22 years old. Surprisingly, Illinois, Indiana tied, just shy under 22. And that's somewhat surprising. And then even in a grander scale of just average roster age totally and ranked nationally, I believe Michigan State is 15th for average roster age. And that's something where we've seen this trend, especially in the transfer portal era, the NIL era, of teams getting a little older. Now, one team that can buck this trend this year is Georgia. Georgia's one of the youngest teams in the country. I believe their average age is around like 19. So they're skewing a lot younger, this year. But I mean, what are the excuses some fan bases made for Indiana the last couple of years? Like, oh, they just got they got the JMU transfers in, they got the old guys in. Hell, let's take advantage of it. Here's MSU trying to take advantage, especially for these first year coaches, for someone like Pat Fitzgerald, who's not coming from a previous job to really steal a roster. He's having to build everything from the transfer portal. Get the old guys in. Let's bring them in. Let's get some get a veteran mentality this first year for MSU. So I think that would be it's a great position to be in for Michigan State, to not only see the quality of transfers we brought in, but that average age coming up, getting these veteran players in. MSU this year has 45 upperclassmen. And, I think 11 Warriors, the Ohio State website, for these next stats I'm going to read here. But the past 5 championships, for upperclassmen, Georgia in 2021 had 41. Alabama had 40. In 2022, Georgia had 36. And TCU had 60. In 2023, Michigan had 75, where Washington had 40. And in 2024, Ohio State 63 to Notre Dame's 52. And then in 2025, Indiana had 46 to where Miami had 39 upperclassmen. So whereas Michigan State coming in with a higher age of starters, higher roster age, and 45 upperclassmen on this roster, it's putting Michigan State at least in a decent position. Now, we can break down those numbers of starter age, roster age, where it stacks up the past 5 championships teams. It's all about fit. And we know that just in general. We know that it's all about the fit of these players and how it'll mesh, how the coaching staff will mesh together in this first year. But I think in this transfer portal era, Pat Fitzgerald is doing this the way to succeed off the bat. And that's what we need from Michigan State, is for Pat Fitzgerald to come in. I'm even seeing all the other websites playing the schedule game, ranking their teams from 1 to 18 here in the Big Ten, and Michigan State projected to be 2-10, 3-9, and I get it if you're going off the past 4 years of what this Michigan State program has been under Tucker and Jonathan Smith. Their ceiling the last 4 years has been 5 wins. And so I get the hate. I get the hate. I can't even call it slander, because you're just using facts of what the previous MSU teams are. But what Pat Fitzgerald's done this offseason, able to retain some key players, able to build this offensive line, able to build the defensive line through the transfer portal, I think Michigan State is in a great spot to at least have a successful first season under Pat Fitzgerald. And some of these numbers kind of help backing it up of just bringing in veteran players. You just absolutely love to see it. And I know I've kind of exhausted this point of these last few weeks, but I'm just excited also this offensive line. I'm excited of who we've brought in with Morawski, with Fraley, with Sharp, bringing in those veteran pieces, those core pieces of what we've just been missing from Spartan football here the last few years. And, bring in secondary help to get Chuck Brantley back, to get Trey Ball in here. Secondary is another big issue issue for Michigan State. So bringing in these veteran players with high experience here in college football, and we've seen teams be very successful with it. I mean, that's why Cignetti was off and running with the Hoosiers. He brought in a lot of those JMU players, was able to bring in these high quality transfers and just be off and running with the Indiana Hoosiers. Like, it's no longer crazy to just put Indiana where they are in the rankings and say, yep, they trust Cignetti. He's earned the trust of the media in college football with what he's done already in 2 years. Now, I'm not saying Pat Fitzgerald's going to come in and, pull a Cignetti, but it looks like we're in a lot better spot for Michigan State football than we were, obviously, the last 4 years under Jonathan Smith, under Mel Tucker, and it just gets me amped. We are 30-ish days away, 32, I think, before the first college football game. I have to start the countdowns now. I mean, we're getting close to high school football. I mean, all the football's starting up, which is what we need here in the state of Michigan. Is the Detroit Tigers are kind of flailing here around the trade deadline, that we're now looking to football season to save us. And for us Spartan fans, like, it's a brand new day here with Pat Fitzgerald. We have a leader that we can somewhat trust out. We're not going to question the attitude or the effort that's going into this team, as we had to the previous 2 years under Jonathan Smith. Even though the first year, I think there was some excitement of what Jonathan Smith built under Oregon State, and maybe in a different era of college football, Jonathan Smith could have worked at Michigan State. But in this transfer portal era, when you're coming in, you need to build these teams quick. You at least need to build a type of relevancy early in your tenure. You can't be trying to build up from 3 wins to 5 wins to 7 wins. You just don't get that time anymore. Like, you're not going to be allotted that time anymore to succeed. Or if you are allotted that time, I don't know if you're going to be taken as seriously as a program by your fan base, by your donors, by just everyone, by the transfer portal. Like, you got to come in, you got to build fast. And that's the pressure that Indiana has put on every single new coach that comes in to coach college football, especially of a Power 4 team. Like, the schools in the group of 5, like, they're still allotted that time to succeed because they're playing a whole different ball game. But if you're a Power 4 team coming in and, like, sorry, you don't get 4 years to build up for your guys. You have to bring in your guys in the transfer portal and go. Now, to expect a college football playoff run year 1 of a coach might be a little exaggerated, but you at least have to show where you were different from the previous regime and where there's growth to be had. So excited to see where Michigan State will take off this season, as we were just going over the roster ages, average age by starter. Michigan State ranks number 1 in the Big Ten, 22 years old, and these are projected starters. They are number 15 in the nation in roster age. So there's a veteran. You can't call rookie mistakes for most of these guys. Like, if we look at position by position, like, we're putting our upperclassmen, out there, and we recruited upperclassmen in those spots where the roster was hurting. And even with, the departures that we've seen, at least filling the holes with veteran players to at least up the competency level of this football team. And so I'm just ready. I'm just ready for football, guys. I'm ready for that first Friday night. Ready for tailgating, as we touched on a little bit here with what Texas A&M is doing with their tailgating setup. Like, I'm excited to just get back up into East Lansing and to eat, breathe, and live Spartan football. So, if you guys want to subscribe right now, subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave your comments on what you guys think of kind of the roster age, and if this kind of sets a different expectation for Michigan State now that we kind of know where the numbers lie in this roster. If having an older roster kind of ups your expectations for Pat Fitzgerald in year one, and knowing the last 5 years, the teams in the championship games, they had upwards of 40 plus upperclassmen. I think there's only one outlier. There's two outliers with Georgia in 2022 and Miami of last year having under 40 upperclassmen. But out of those 10 teams, that's 2 out of the 10 teams that had under 40. And Michigan State sits here at 45 upperclassmen going into the 2026 season. So I know if just with those numbers provided, if that changes possibly your expectation for Pat Fitzgerald in year one, and kind of what we can hope to see. Because even the teams on our schedule, Illinois is number 2, Northwestern 4, UCLA 5. This is just Big Ten. Purdue is 6. Surprisingly, the team, the last on this list is Michigan. Sitting there under 21 years old for their average starter age. And like I said before, like, we can have all the old people we want starting. Is this all going to gel properly? Is Joe Rossi and Max Bola going to get the defense on the right page? Is Nick Sheridan going to get the offense rolling the right way? Is the wide receiver room, is there going to be breakout players there? So that's really what it all comes down to. But just knowing that we have an older roster, does this change what we expect year one? And for me, it kind of does, hopefully raising that floor a little bit, expecting less of the dumb procedural penalties, playing more composed, having a head coach that will demand more composure out of these players, and expecting more out of these older players. So for me, it definitely does kind of raise, I don't know the expectation, but definitely raises the floor of this team and the job I expect from Pat Fitzgerald year one. Like, we have the guys that have played enough college football to where it has to be better. Like, we can't just keep changing our expectations week by week based on the results. So I'm excited to see what happens. Excited for that first Friday night. So this is Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Ryan Elke. We're live every Tuesday, Thursday at 9 p.m. Like, subscribe, leave your comments. If you want to ask questions, if it's not a show day, if you're watching later on, find me on Twitter, X at RyanEL_key. Just drop me any question, or if I post the episode of like, hey, we're live here, and you missed the show, or just leave a comment under that tweet. Just drop it there. We'll get to it in a future show. But I'm excited for this week as well. It's Big Ten Media Days are kicking off today. Michigan State is speaking tomorrow, day 2 on Wednesday. So Thursday's show at 9 p.m. we'll be diving into everything that Michigan State said, what Pat Fitzgerald said. Jordan Hall and Nakai Martinez are the player representatives. So we'll see what what questions they were asked as well, especially Jordan Hall being with his third head coach at Michigan State and kind of staying with the Spartans. Kind of interested to kind of see what he has to say about being, a true Spartan dog through it all. So excited to bring that all to you Thursday. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And, we're one day closer to football, guys. So thank you for watching Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Ryan Elke, and go green.